Welcome to Managing Asia. I'm Christine Tan. The private jet business is shooting for the skies. Demand for this ultra-luxury treatment is taking off here in Asia. And one man riding on this growth is Thomas Floor, the owner of VistaJet. Thomas Floor only flies private jets, an expensive habit that has landed him this, his very own luxury aviation business, designed to change the way top executives travel.
I like to look at a market, I like to look at an industry, and if something doesn't make sense to me, I need to change it.
Talking to him inside one of his longer range planes, a Bombardier Global 6000, he showed me the details of his obsession.
It starts with, we have a scent which we develop, so every client touching a VistaJet airplane will have the same scent and smell experience. The way we work with catering companies. I personally love to have food catered from a local favorite restaurant, and we talked about Novo, we talked about some of the Italian restaurants, and I think it's those elements where we change the customer touch point to make them feel home away from home. It's the best sleeping experience in the sky. Very customer developed mattress and fretted neckwear and just like you would sleep at home. And it goes to how our flight attendants are serving our clients.
Just out of curiosity, when was the last time you traveled commercial?
I was making this joke. I was landing in Macau yesterday, and I took the commercial helicopter.
That's not commercial.
I knew it.
The flamboyant businessman owns 100% of VistaJet, with assets said to be worth over $1 billion. It's a business he's built from scratch in 2004, from money made earlier in his career in asset finance. Though Floor had no aviation experience, he was driven by frustration to fill a space in the sky.
In the 90s, I had a corporate jet available for my business needs, and I really saw it as a very effective business tool to create time. And then I started chartering, and I was very frustrated because I never knew what I would get. You pay high prices, and you don't know exactly what you're getting. Those were the first, ideas on how, I kind of wanted to change this industry.
During the time the private jet industry was used to fractional ownership or chartering, you completely changed the business model. What made you do it?
Well, I talked to the fractional guys, and they offered me their product. And first and foremost, it was a very complicated proposition. It was a share purchase agreement, an operating agreement, a management agreement, a surcharge agreement, and 70, 80 pages later, I said, guys, I just want to fly. And I want guaranteed availability, and I'm guaranteeing to you that I'll pay you. And those were the early beginnings of VistaJet, where I said, well, if I have a couple of airplanes, just offer my clients, a simple way to fly, 3-page contract, guaranteed price per hour, you pay me quarterly, and I'm going to give you guaranteed availability of this aircraft in a certain region. So I started out in Europe, offering that in the end of 2003, 2004. And, initially I was myself the biggest client, and then people just loved the airplane.
When you first started, business was good. Almost every plane that you took delivery was almost immediately booked. But then the financial crisis happened in 2009. Bookings dropped dramatically, and it couldn't have been worse for you because in terms of timing, you had just placed a $1.2 billion order of new jets. Did you go through many sleepless nights just thinking about what to do next?
I remember that day in October.
Just thinking about what to do next.
I remember that day in October 31st, 2008. I transferred $91 million to Bombardier. That was 45 days after Lehman disaster, and taking airplane deliveries and making pre-delivery payments because we saw that we have a customer base which actually needed to fly more. And in the financial crisis, the industry captains, they actually, look for more opportunities. There is more, hand-holding with their clients, with their banks, and so on and so forth. And that's what I saw during the financial crisis really helping me to grow revenue rather than actually lose revenue.
You also had made a big push into emerging markets like Middle East, Asia, and Africa. To what extent did that help shield you from the global fallout of the financial crisis?
Well, I think that was the second pillar of the strategy, that we looked at, is the world really as bad as, what you see day in and day out on television? And that's where, some of my clients said, why don't you come out into the Middle East? People still fly. Why don't you come to Africa? And, I saw big growth potential in those regions, and in early 2010.
So you kind of shifted strategy.
Exactly. So in early 2010, I diversified into emerging markets, and brought us longer flights, longer range flights, and very loyal customers. Because in those regions, nobody was prepared to bring brand new airplanes, and I thought that was very sad. While the same quality of industry leaders are existing in those regions, and they had 15, 20-year-old airplanes, why wouldn't they deserve the same brand new airplane somebody gets in London and Zurich or in New York? And that was a major shift in our strategy, and I think it paid off,
that saved
massively.
That saved you.
It was part of the strategy to grow the company.
After many years concentrating in emerging markets, you finally entered the US market last year. What took you so long to enter the world's biggest private jet market?
I listened for too long to advisors who said, well, I'm not sure your product would work in the United States.
And you believe them?
And I was believing that for too long. And it's probably one of the significant mistakes I was making. And really what brought me to the US was business of large US corporations flying with us in the rest of the world. And that encouraged me to come to the US market. And it's something which admittedly was too late, but it's paying off massively.
It's essentially a market dominated by NetJets, which belongs to Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway. Do you think you have what it takes to take on NetJets?
Well, I talk about the fractional market in general. The US has a very strong fractional market. And I think what we saw over the last couple of years is that people learned their lesson, that by buying a fraction of an aircraft, you only know your true cost per hour when you sell the share, because you don't know what that depreciation is. And the depreciation of a share was a lot higher than what people expected. With us, it's a simple hourly rate. We own all the airplanes at VistaJet, and you don't have the asset risk.
So you're stealing market share from NetJets?
Absolutely. We're stealing market share from the fractional market in the US. There's other fractional ownership offerings in the US market. But I think over and beyond, what US clients enjoy is our global reach. And it's that very nice balance of our fleet between the US and Asia and Africa and Europe and the Middle East, which allows any client to fly on an absolute consistent product. And this is what the fractional guys are not doing. I mean, they're very focused on the US. 85%, 90% of their fleet is in the US. Some of the fractional offerings are 100%. But that's not the world today anymore. The world is global, and you gotta have a global product.
How many customers do you have in the US right now?
Well, we're flying at a capacity level of about 90 to 95%. And in terms of like the firm, repetitive clients we're having in the US, we're talking about 25 to 30. So, it's that fills up the 3 aircraft we have, and until the rest of this year, we've been trying to close we're trying to grow this to about 8 to 10 aircraft. Now, what we need to know is that we're not selling, fractions of aircraft down to 50 hours or 25 hours. So our average uptake on hours is between 100 and 150 hours per year, and that's why our fleet is not as jammed as with the fractional guys.
The US private jet industry suffered a minor setback in 2009 when several auto executives flew to Washington in their private jets to ask for a government bailout. Suddenly, the idea of traveling on a private jet became too excessive, too overindulgent. Is that still the perception today in the US?
Well, I think what corporations are concerned of is buying a $55, $60 million airplane and putting it on their balance sheet, and then just sitting there, and eventually flying, executives. The question each corporation needs to ask themselves is, you want to invest into one, or you want to use it? And that's where we come in. We offer a service where you don't need to have any capital invested. You should invest your capital in your own business, and treat it as an operating expense to judge on every single trip Is it worth?
And it's not on the balance sheet.
And it's not on the balance sheet. Unless an airplane flies 500-600 hours per year, Christine, it is significantly less expensive, to take a solution from VistaJet. And very often corporations have jets, and these jets only fly 200 or 300 hours per year.
China is your next big target. You want to have a base there. How are things coming along? Have you gotten approval?
Well, I'm the first person to admit that I keep on being wrong when we get the final certificate to operate. So I made 3 predictions. I stopped making predictions. What I can tell you is that we have our first 2 aircraft in the U.S. They're already converted to Chinese specification.
Ready to fly.
Ready to fly. We had the CAAC in the United States approving the aircraft. So the B logo is coming on as we speak. And these airplanes are going to be flown over to China in the next 30 days. The operation procedures are all signed off on. And short of making another prediction where I might be wrong, I believe that during the month of May, the next 30 to 45 days, we should be finally up and running. Today we're already flying in and out of China every day on our international fleet, but those aircraft will be specifically dedicated for traffic rights within China.
So you've gotten a green light finally.
We have a green light. The planes are ready. It took way longer. We made a massive financial investment to put 2 planes down over a 5-month period to convert them to Chinese specification. And that's the kind of commitment and belief we have in the Chinese market.
Just how developed is the private jet market in China? Potentially, what sort of growth could we see coming out of China alone?
Well, we see in our business a high double-digit growth. So
what is a high double-digit?
20%,
20%,
that's somewhere between 15 and 20%. Asia is between 10 and 15%. We've got to talk about Southeast Asia as well because it's booming. And China itself, we see that 15 to 20% growth rate. We have a business plan until 2020, so for the next 5 years, and we believe in China we'll have between 10 and 15 airplanes by the year 2020.
Stay with us. After the break, we asked Thomas Flo, founder and chairman of VistaJet, about his $7 billion fleet expansion strategy. Managing Asia, we'll be right back. Thomas Flo has flown to the remotest of places, whether it's Mozambique or Ulaanbaatar.
And I think that's where the DNA of the company, that's where the appeal is, that's what clients are experiencing, because when pilots feel comfortable to fly to remote locations, the client feels that.
His luxury private jets are outfitted to fly to over 190 destinations directly, in style. Where do you get your experienced pilots to fly to these remote locations? Where do they come from?
They're very, very picky. You see, we have a very rigorous selection program. We're lucky as a company to have, massive amounts of CVs coming in who want to fly with us because it's all a brand new fleet. So pilots like to fly brand new airplanes.
VistaJet is ready for another big takeoff. It has seen traffic in Asia double the past year, with the region well on the way to contributing a third to its total revenue. You made headlines in 2012 when you signed the biggest deal in aviation history, a $7.8 billion deal to buy 56 jets with an option of 86 more from Canada's Bombardier. Do you like buying your aircraft in bulk?
Well, look, we saw an opportunity to connect the globe in one single service area without paying for the ferry leg. And it's a little bit technical, but we got to talk about this. If you charter a plane, you have to pay for where you go, and the plane has to come back because the owner wants his plane back. Our goal is to have a ferry-free world. Ferry-free world means you're only paying for the minutes you're in the air and touch down. And then that VistaJet airplane takes another client from that city to another city. And we're well on the way there. We have by far the largest service area in the world. And obviously, service area means, as the area where you don't pay for the ferry. And obviously for that, you need long-range airplanes. And the growth is very significant at the top end, at that long-range part of the market. And we're seeing the global market is growing in that area, approximately 10%, versus the lower end airplanes are probably only growing 2 to 3%. Cut a long story short, we saw this huge opportunity to connect the world, and we went from the statistics. We went from 3 Global Express in 2012 to 23 now, within 27 months. And which is out there. Which
we're talking about 142 new planes. How on earth are you going to finance these planes?
So it's a 10-year contract. So part of our fleet philosophy is to only fly brand new airplanes. So once an airplane is 4 or 5 years old, we only fly them under manufacturer warranty. Then we would exchange them. So if you look at this massive order, obviously it builds in the fleet renewal, always after maximum 4 to 5 years. And there's optionality, like you said, there's a firm and an option part, and we have converted a fair amount of options already because we need more airplanes than the 56 we ordered firm. As far as the finance is concerned, we have a big pool of banks which are financing the debt.
Well, you have a background in asset finance, so that ought to be helpful.
That certainly helps.
Yeah.
And I think, if I look at our business today, I think it's that experience in asset finance and the hard steps I had to go through to learn the operation of aviation.
So ultimately, what sort of fleet size are you looking at? What's that critical mass that you need?
Well, we certainly have the critical mass today because we operate very efficiently already around the world. By 2020, we believe we're going to be at about 100 airplanes.
100 airplanes.
And I think we're going to...
From the 45 you have now. That's double the fleet.
It's double the fleet. I think, in this, just to give you some numbers, it's second quarter 2015 now. Since I bought my first airplane from Bombardier, I paid Bombardier and took delivery of 83 airplanes.
You pride yourself in having the newest and the youngest fleet for your customers to choose from. When you look at the sort of depreciation costs that you have to bear when you sell into the secondary market, does the philosophy, does the strategy of always having a young fleet always pay off?
Yes. Here's the thing. There is a very liquid market for young used airplanes. So being Bombardier's largest customer, obviously we enjoy great terms and conditions, and it really allows us to use the airplane intensively in the first 3 or 4 years, and then find in the used market a pickup of these airplanes still in great conditions, 1 or 2 years warranty left, and list prices grow over time, and we buy at good prices, and then we resell them, and we find a lot of liquidity and take-up where we sell the airplanes.
So you're now in the US and you're going to fly in China soon. You're going to start operations there very soon. How do you expect to do in 2015 this year?
Well, so far this year, the first quarter, we're up approximately 30% in the same track record as last year. We would be up more, but the euro-dollar exchange rate put a little dent on the euro-denominated revenue, and we're reporting in US dollars. So for that portion of the revenue, we've growing it above 30%. But if you look at the net dollar figure, you end up at a 15% growth.
But for the full year, could you do better than last year?
We believe if we continue to grow between 20 and 30%. Well, remember, I'm Swiss. I want to be conservative. So, if we as a company, there's not many companies around the globe with global leadership who grow 20% plus. So I think we're very happy to put in another year like last year, whilst we're expanding into those regions. What we really see is that the continents are connecting. And I think that's the major change, the positive change I see in 2015. We see African leaders flying to the US. We continue to see Asian leaders flying to Africa. So the connection, the traffic I was speaking earlier about Trans-Pacific, that's just developing as we speak.
Is that where growth is mostly going to come from this year?
Exactly. That's where the growth is coming from. Obviously, Europe is still not really out of the woods from an economic point of view. But let me address Russia for a moment, because some people have concern about the business in Russia, but actually we put in the strongest year in the company's history in Russia, and this is just simply again, coming back to the asset-light business model. Whereas in a downturn, like you're seeing in Russia today, with the economic issues, people shy away from an aircraft purchase, but they still need to fly. They still need to run their businesses, and that drives them towards us.
Stay with us. More with Thomas Flohr, founder of VistaJet, in just a moment. Managing Asia, we'll be right back. You know, this company, VistaJet, and you founded in 2004, huge success. It's made you a multi-millionaire, and it's now one of the fastest growing private aviation companies in the world. What do you attribute your success to?
I think it's consistency, determination, not taking no for an answer. I was told so many times in this industry, Thomas, this will not work. You know, nobody can make money in aviation. You know, it's business jets are dedicated. People will only buy, and you know, pilots need to come home at night. And I heard all these things, and it didn't make sense to me. And I think if you challenge me with something which doesn't make sense, that inspires me to change it. That's probably part of my DNA, but that's how I take it.
Well, you completely changed the industry model. You did away with a home base for your planes. You like being a rebel. You get a big kick out of it.
That's probably true.
Yeah. You're 44 years old, Swiss-born, graduated with a degree in business and political science. You made your wealth, your first fortune in asset finance, then plunged yourself into the world of private aviation. How would you describe your leadership and your management style? What is Thomas Flohr like in person?
Yeah, I set very high goals for my management team. I believe that if I see an opportunity, you got to take it. And I always compare it with that classic Windows. Windows are open, and at some point in time, windows close. And if you're not there at the right time,
so go for it.
You got to go for it. And so I set high goals. I would call myself a perfectionist, chief perfectionist officer. That's a new phrase. I want to make sure that everything is to the liking of our clients, and I'm offering myself as the guinea pig to the company. I said, try it on me. You know, if there's a new way you want to serve food, if there's a new way to, you know, put me to bed, then you know, test it on me. It's being deeply involved, whilst at the same time being able to delegate and let your team run the company is a fair balance you need to find. And I think if they get the inspiration from the owner, they thrive on that, and they you know, people work very hard. This is a 24/7 industry, and we had over 30,000 passengers last year, more than 12,000 flights, and you got to be on top of your game every day in and out.
Finally, it's been 10 years since you founded the company. It's still very much private, 100% owned by you. Any plans at all to take it public one day? Is that your ambition?
Well, my ambition is to continue to build the world leader in business aviation. And as I told you, my ultimate goal is to make the world a ferry-free zone. Meaning that you can hop on a plane in Australia and fly to South America and not pay for the ferry. We're still a little bit away from that. We're missing South America, we're missing Australia so far. We're just including Southeast Asia, we're including most parts of Africa.
So no plans to take it public?
Well, you know, given the success we have as a company, of course we have investment bankers knocking at our door and offering their services. And as a prudent business leader, I am listening to any advice from people who I trust. So as we speak today, there is no official plan.
Would you consider it in future?
I would consider listening to strategic alternatives. You know, the bankers are making great cases. They say, well, you as a company are ready. You know, you have a global platform. You're an industry leader. The financials they love. But you know, I love owning the company. If this will arise, then you'll probably be the first person to call.
Thomas, thank you very much for talking to me.
Thanks, Christine. It was a pleasure.
And that was Thomas Flohr, Chairman and founder of VistaJet here in Singapore. Hope you've enjoyed the program. Join us again next week for more leadership insights here on Managing Asia. I'm Christine Tan. Thanks for watching.